That is one of our outside kitties. He was just a kitten last spring, although not last spring, the spring before that. Maybe not even that long. Last summer, he was just a kitten. He has a twin, and the only difference though is we can tell them apart because the twin has little white feet, and so that one's name is Socks, and this one's name is Tigger, like it's in the cartoon kitty cat. I don't see Socks very often. I think Socks has a home now or something maybe, but just last week I did see them walking around together, so I know that Socks is still around. And the little black kitty that I put videos of is their dad, which is weird. He's solid black and they're solid red, which I find is kind of funny. They don't have a lot of family resemblance, I know that. But the mama and the two babies and the daddy used to run around together all the time. I just saw the mama last week. She's here somewhere and I was feeding her. And the dad was here this morning eating. So far the dad and Tigger are the ones that trust me the most. But they won't let me get anywhere near them because they're wild kitties. But I'm surprised they don't recognize me as being a wild kitty. I must be too much of a wildebeest for them. They're looking at me and they're like, oh, that guy's fat, he'd probably eat us. But then again, they probably don't give stranger kitties the time of day either. So I don't blame them. Tigger, Tigger, Tigger. Come on, kitty, 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 kitty. They got a lot of competition out here for food. The other night, I don't know if it was last night, I think it might have been, there was like 8 million raccoons out here. It was a mama and about 5 or 6 babies. Even though the babies were just barely smaller than him. They're not brand new, but they're still little kids. Following mama around. See, I put that little pile of food there so you wouldn't be so nervous, buddy. Hey guys, you see that flag over there? I shouldn't be all making it like this, but that's not because I'm MAGA. I'm not. Quite the opposite, in fact. But I've been flying that flag. This house used to be my mom's house. She had this house for 29 years before she passed. I had to buy it from her because she had Alzheimer's, or not Alzheimer's, she had dementia really bad during COVID. And no nursing home would take her. Once we discovered that her dementia was bad enough, once that happened, it was unfortunately just at the start of COVID, and nobody would take her. They wouldn't let people out or in. So that was a interesting thing for my sister and I to solve. I didn't live in town, and I lived in about 40 miles away, and my sister lived right up the street, but she lives in a pretty small apartment. So we finally got everybody in the family together. She had 5 kids. One of them has not with us anymore, but she got everybody together. My sister did. My sister is a genius when it comes to like orchestrating people and managing, she could manage an orchestra easy. My other siblings helped financially, but nobody wanted to invest the time. I was here, but I was, 40 miles away, and I was getting here as often as I could. But my sister and her daughter Sophie did the huge bulk of the work. Becky is my sister. Between Becky and Sophie, they made my mom's last few months wonderful. And we came together as a family in a lot of ways to make that happen. But anyway, I bought this house from her because we were told we finally found a place for her in Boston. Now I'm in Clinton, Iowa, and we were searching the country for a place that would take her during COVID, and it took months, and we finally found a place in Boston. But they were like a Lutheran organization, and they had one stipulation that they would not take anybody if they had any large debt, like a home mortgage or something like that. We could not get the house sold during COVID because real estate agents wouldn't even come to see her house. They weren't really consorting with customers either or anything like that. It was a real mess. So my wife and I had no intention. We actually were in the state of Oregon on the West Coast where I had a business. And then we moved back to Iowa because my mom was living out there too. And my house was here being rented by my sister. But I knew something was wrong with my mom. She was married to somebody who was not my father. And he was telling me, "You've got to take her. I don't want her anymore. She's crazy. She's got dementia." And he'd been telling me this for a few months before I was like, and I got to the point where I just hated that guy's guts, telling me about my mom being crazy. Lo and behold, he was correct. And I knew something was off, too. But I didn't know what to do about it, And finally, my wife and I brought her back home to Iowa, to her house, and we're hoping that she'd only been out there for 2 years, and as it turned out, and I kind of thought this was the deal. I saw this coming, but during that 2-year period, the only reason she ended up wanting to get married to that guy was because of the dementia. Was making her kind of get rid of all of her common sense and filters. The guy was kind of a bag of dicks. And, but she liked him, so I was cool with that. And then he turned into pretty much what I thought he would turn into. And so it was time. It was time to come home. And I was thinking that maybe coming back home where she's familiar with would kind of help her mind readjust a little bit to be something that she could center herself in. We got her back here, and that was not the case. Took her to a doctor and stuff, and she was in the doctor. That's a whole other story. The doctor wouldn't help us, but I did a bunch of research and stuff, and my mom was in stage 4. Not Alzheimer's. I keep on saying that. Dementia, because Alzheimer's is a form of dementia, but it wasn't Alzheimer's. The kicker was we found out that she was I suspected everything else was lining up. But when that doctor finally realized that my sister and I were not trying to pull one over on the system or whatever, she finally did an x-ray or a CAT scan or something like that of my mom's brain, and she saw the telltale signs. It looked like a buckshot in her brain. 8 million little black spots where that had been tiny strokes, killing different parts of her brain. Like strokes where that things were breaking away, or to block blood vessels, or just scarring up blood vessels because she had diabetes toward the end, and making it to where that the blood vessels could no longer allow blood cells to go by. So there was these 8 zillion little black spots where portions of her brain had just been shut off, basically. And that's what causes dementia. And man, I've done so much research on dementia. I had, like everybody, I had seen crazy old people when I was a kid, and they always called them senile, I'd seen crazy old senile people my whole life, But it's funny, Alzheimer's wasn't even discovered until the middle of the last century. And I'm not going to get into that today. But so my wife and I bought this house for her to try to get her into that home, and it sucks. I still want to punch my sister every time. Well, to be truthful, I've always wanted to punch my sister. Never bad, but like in the arm or something. Ever since I was little, I used to run her over with a ketchup bottle. I had a big Heinz ketchup bottle with wheels on it and handlebars, and that I would scoot around the house in. And as soon as that bald baby popped up, and was laying on the floor on a blanket or something like that, my mom would be sitting right there playing with her, and I'd be like, let me try to run her over, see what happens then. But yeah, my little sister has always been somebody I would protect, viciously at school and stuff like that, which happened often. But I also wanted to punch her a lot because I was that kid. Never like in the teeth, you know what I mean? Never in the eye. I mean, I usually, and Becky will recognize this, that I, on a regular basis, would try to be helpful and teach her how to fight and teach her about pressure points. And that's how I framed it. I was a jackass. Hey, Becky, remember the pressure point lessons? So I was just helping her. I was just teaching her, because she was one day going to use pressure points on people. Sounds legit. She learned her lessons. She probably knows all of them now. I don't know if she's had to use them a lot, but she sure knows them. I had a lot of fun as a kid. But anyway, my wife and I, who only came back here to bring my mom back for the most part, then wound up, I was about to swear, and I'm trying not to. It's on video and all that. But we wound up basically staying here a longer term than we thought. We thought we'd be able to buy this house and then, make a little improvements to it and then turn it over. And of course, right after we bought this house, the bottom fell out of the market. Shocker. Timing is everything. I swear to God, sometimes it's like I look for somebody to start kicking like nothing, and then I run over and I put my balls right where their foot's going to be. That's my life. But anyway, timing is everything. So now I have a house in Iowa. I've been flying that flag there. The whole point of starting this whole story was that flag. My mom had this house for 29 years, and over the years I've lived on the West Coast for the most part. But I came back every few years and, like for a few months kind of a thing, and did repairs to her house that she was asking me to do. I repainted the house. I installed new windows. Some of the windows that were installed were done by a window company, but the other ones were done by me. I installed new doors, a new kitchen, all kinds of crap. Did a bunch of wiring. This house was born in 1907, and so its wiring is, at the time, I'm sure it was awesome, but it's not been awesome ever since. But in that whole time, I've been flying that flag. Now, every spring, I change the flag so it looks brand new. But in that whole time, except it used to not hang there, it used to hang off of that first pole right here. That one. But last winter, the little holder that the flag comes off of broke off of the in high wind or something, broke off of that pole, and I would normally have just repaired that, except that with all the stupid shit that's been going on lately with MAGA and Nazis pretty much using the American flag basically as, they're basically rebranding themselves from fascists into something people can, warm up to because they're wrapping it up with an American flag, which is horrifying to me. But instead of rehanging it on that pole, I decided to stop, making people nervous all around me that aren't MAGA, and I moved it in toward the house. I probably thought of it in a different way at the time, but that's really kind of what I did. And it's really embarrassing to me because I've never been ashamed of my country before now. You know, it was hard enough in the first Trump thing. People fucked up and they elected him. They didn't have much of a choice. You know, I mean, Hillary would not have been a great president, but she would have been, you know, a million times better than Donald Trump. And I obviously could see that at the time, so I didn't vote for him. I voted for her. And then when we had the opportunity, we voted Joe Biden in, and which was a vast improvement. And of course, unfortunately, though, Joe Biden was at the end of his sell-by date, and he couldn't keep it together. So I mean, you know, you can only do so much when your brain's, you know, going. What are you going to do? You can't. There's no way you can straighten up and fly right. And then there was a big effort by this fascist group, and I'm not going to go into that during this conversation, but to get Trump reelected, and they won. And that's when I started being embarrassed for my country, and not embarrassed for my country, but embarrassed of my country, which is just so far and removed from my whole identity. A very, very large piece of my identity is as an American. It's a very large... I don't have an American flag tattooed on me because I'm not a nut. But at the same time, now I'm halfway thinking about doing it. And then the fucked up thing is I wouldn't be telling people about it because I wouldn't want people to think I'm MAGA. Because MAGA at this point... A lot of people were MAGA. They didn't know any better or whatever. I'm not going to go into that. But most of them have seen the truth by now. You know, like Sean Ryan. I used to really admire Sean Ryan. And then I found out that he was crazy-ass MAGA. And man, I had to really wrestle with that for a while. That somebody at his level of patriotism and... You know, he has sacrificed a lot. I mean, if you know anything about him, he has sacrificed a lot for his country. And has gone through some real trials, real trials. But when he had children, it started to really change his perspective, which I'm grateful for. And suddenly when Donald Trump was running, and I can understand this, he was promising, I'm going to make the Epstein files public information because, you know, you're going to be surprised who's in them and all that kind of stuff. And then after he was elected, the people, you know, he figured out by then how to own the FBI. He figured out by then how to own the Attorney General and how to own Congress, as long as he could keep his party in power. But the things that he promised never came to fruition. So at some point it was really, really obvious that, because the news, thank God, was reporting the news like they always have, and screwing up his bullshit narrative. And when it became obvious, too obvious, for people like Sean Ryan, who was a person with honor, even though he was misguided, he still had honor and he still had integrity, despite some of the problems he had in life that was as a result of his service, realized that Trump was actually a part of the problem and that he fucked up on it when he voted for him. You know, he followed his instincts, and you know, the thing is, the propaganda machine that was put up was a big successful thing. And then suddenly people that he talked to all the time. He was a Navy SEAL, and he was in the Navy in an intelligence gathering group, which is the Navy SEAL too, and they're not just killers. He started talking to people that he was connected to that were heavily involved in the intelligence gathering realm, and they told him, "Hey, this is a Russian operation. This is what you're going. You were a victim of this," because he was wanting to know, how did I get talked into this crap? And it was explained to him by several people, several really, really intelligent, well-connected people to this whole thing. And that's a post that I'll give you another time. And I've written a paper on it, but I don't really know where to publish it. I asked my little brother, who is, in my opinion, one of the top military people I've known in my life. You know, I know lots of military people and some really, really amazing military people. My best friend is Jeremy Light, and he was in the Army for 29 years. Started out as an E1 like everybody else, and played his cards right. And when he retired, he was Chief Warrant Officer 5, which is also known as a unicorn. And it's because, have you ever seen a unicorn? No. Nobody sees unicorns. CW5s don't get seen either very much because there's not many of them. But my friend Jeremy is a fucking genius. He always said he was lucky. He always talks about the golden horseshoe up his ass. But it's all bullshit. He knows better and I know better. It's because that fucker can play poker. And he made wise decisions. Well, Jerry served his country for a long time in the Air Force, and then went from the Air Force to the Navy. Actually, went from the Air Force to college, and then went from, once he got his master's degree, then went from that to the Navy as an officer. It's funny, he was got to be the oldest officer, brand new officer in the Navy that there is. If he had been in the Army, he would have been a second lieutenant, and I don't know the Navy rank structure very well. But he'd have been the oldest second lieutenant in history, just about, and something tells me. But he's a smart guy, and he's a good guy, and for the most part just wants to do the right thing, And his time in the Air Force, a bunch of his time in the Air Force, and he was in the Air Force as a cop, but then he transferred to an intelligence, digital intelligence group. And then Space Command, believe it or not, his patch had a picture of an alien on it. Now, conspiracy theorists would have a field day with that, but I only teased him about that. I don't have a field day with that because I knew exactly what he was doing. And then when he went from that to the college to the Navy, when he went to the Navy, he became an intelligence person. My dad, when he was in the Navy, he was an intelligence person, except that he was a secret fucking like 007 intelligence person, so much so that nobody knew it. One human being that was alive during my dad's time knew he was an intelligence person that we knew. And my dad never told us. We didn't find out for 20 years after my dad died. 10, 20 years, something like that. And it was only because a book ratted him out. And then I called the author, and the author said, "Here, if you have any questions about this," told me what he was in, and he said, "If you have any questions about this, call this guy." And he gave me a name of somebody I knew very well. I knew this guy as my grandfather. He wasn't my grandfather. I never knew my dad's dad because he died right around the year I was born. But this other fella named Morris Combs he was probably an E9 when he retired. His son was an E9 when he retired, I'm guessing. But Morris was my dad's handler in the Navy. So, sure enough, my dad was such a good risk that he never fucking told anybody. And when he died, I had a top secret clearance in the military myself. So it's not like he couldn't have trusted me. But he gave a promise. If you didn't need to know, you didn't know. You know, and that's how it is. Need to know. The last clearance I held was TSSCI, which means Top Secret Segmented Compartmentalized Information. And that means that nobody with that security clearance has the ability to know the whole picture, you know. That a lot of different people that aren't even connected know different pieces, and if they were all in the same room, if they got to talking, wow, that would be a big story. Except that no one person could tell everything because all they know is what they know, is what they needed to know. And that's the very definition of need to know. My last security clearance was TSSCI. And so yeah, my little brother wasn't a spook, but he was because I knew what his job was. He speaks perfect Spanish like an Hispanic person would not be able to tell he was American. And his first wife was Mexican, and his second wife now is Guatemalan. And so if hanging out with his first wife's family, that was a constant lesson in Spanish, and that you will learn Spanish kind of thing. If they have to know English, you have to know Spanish, and that seems legit. But then with it, by the time he had spent years doing that, when the Navy, he said, I'm very good at Spanish, and the Navy tested him, and they're like, no, you're not just good at Spanish. You can speak with people from South America, and they would never know that you're American. They would never know that you can speak English even, So that put him in a good category. We had a lot of operations that always have and probably always will in South America. And my little brother, especially now with drug cartels. And so that's what my little brother was involved with, was listening to them talk and telling everybody what's going on. And he had such a good mastery of the language that you would get all the nuances. You would understand all the slangs as they were, just like we do, right? A lot of people just taught a different language in the military. There's no way. They know the language, but they don't know all the nuances like any kid does, or any 20-year-old natural born first language person does, except my little brother did. So I come from a long line of those people. And I've had other videos this way, so I'll tell you, my dad was on the Scorpion. Him and one other guy lived through it. All of his friends that he hung out with in the Navy, period, all of his friends except for one man got killed on the same day. And my father got off the boat 2 days before that happened. It was sheer luck. And then I was born a few months later. In the same year. And so that flag right there was tattooed on my brain from the time that I was a little kid. I mean, before I was born, it was destiny, right? It got me through a lot of hard times when I was in the military. Difficult times that I had a little tiny patch that I would keep in my pocket. And when I was having a real tough time, suffering, I would take that sucker out and I would look at it. Or even just put my hand in my pocket and know what it was. And I used it as a kind of almost like a subconscious type of trigger that would give me strength, give me energy, give me purpose when other people were giving up. And believe me, I was in a lot of shit where people gave up. That literally, over time, became a subconscious thing for me. I saw somebody burning a flag one time, and I'm all about freedom, but that's not one I could handle. And I just ran up on him, and I grabbed that flag, which was fully engulfed in flames. They had poured something on it, like an accelerant. And I wrapped it around him and just gave him a big hug, and I said, fucker, we're going to die together. And I was happy to be third-degree burns over my whole body if that's what it took. But right then, the cops showed up and pulled me off of him, and I was like, oh, so I don't get barbecued today. Okay. Yeah. Those cops didn't give me one iota of shit, though, which is, in some ways it's wrong. But most cops are prior service. And so most cops understood what I understood. Just the 2 months of basic training alone can brainwash you 100%. And then after 4 years, just 4 years from start to finish, if you never thought of the flag before, after 4 years in the Army, it will own you. But for me, it was, I spent till I was 20 in the military. And for the 20 years of my life, that flag owned me. And I happily, and still I don't have one tiny iota of regret for allowing that. I gave myself to it because I believe in this country. I don't believe in it blindly. I'm the first one that calls out our horrifying mistakes. And to illustrate that point, when all that shit after Ferguson was going down, and then with the umpteen millionth things that happened after that, and then George Floyd got murdered, I was like, that's it, I can't fucking stand this no more. And so I started getting in the street. And I started wearing, I have like 5 Black Lives t-shirts. I started wearing them like every fucking day. I had my own business, so I could. Everywhere I went, I was I was a contractor, so I would be going to Home Depot and Menards here in Iowa and getting supplies to go build shit, fix shit, whatever. And I'd wear that in there. And I still haven't taken this damn thing off for more than 5 minutes since Ferguson. Because I knew right away that was what the cop did was wrong in Ferguson. I went through a bunch of appropriate use of force classes when I started working in preparing to work in law enforcement and working in law enforcement for my 2 years. And I knew that was wrong. I mean, I knew that was really, really, really wrong. There are very specific rules about when to use lethal force. And you won't ever shoot somebody in the back when you're using lethal force, because you don't use lethal force on somebody who's running away. Unless they have a gun in their hand, you're absolutely positive they're going to shoot somebody in the next, 5 minutes, kind of thing. You don't shoot them in the back. But I knew what that was. My father was from the South, and when I was a baby, he moved us. Well, no, when I was a toddler, he moved us out of the South, and his biggest reason for doing that is he did not want us exposed to that anymore. He didn't want us to become that, the white version of the people that my cousins, that some of them use the N-word like other people use the word the or was or and without a thought. It's just a word. But it's not just a word. It's horrifying. And the shit we've done to Native Americans, I'm the first person to call that shit out. So I'm an ultra supporter of America and what we do, and I'm also its biggest critic when it comes to stuff that we should have done better. We should have known better. And that we've caused never-ending scars over. There's no way to change the past, but there is stuff we can do. You can't change the wind. You can adjust your sails. And that is, we change what we do in the future. And the future is now. The future is always now. They used to say the best time to plant a shade tree was 20 years ago. Well, You know, I can't do anything about what happened 20 years ago. But I guarantee you one thing, for 20 solid years, easily, I have been fighting. I haven't gotten really violent yet about it. I've definitely offered a few people to get violent. When I was wearing those Black Lives shirts, believe me, there was a bunch of old dipshits that are old farmers and stuff, you know, coming up on me like, you know, like they have to defend the South when they're not even in the South. And I offered to feed them their fucking lunch for free. And I would make it easy for them because they wouldn't have any teeth. And every one of them realized at that second, which was actually pretty bright of them, that, holy shit, you're spitting on the wrong guy right now. You're stepping on Superman's cape. Better watch out. I couldn't fly, but I was Superman. I couldn't fly, though. But I could do some amazing shit back then. I bet I could do some amazing shit now. I just don't have to, which is nice. I know one thing. I don't bounce anymore, I bet. I probably break now. So I try not to work on roofs anymore. Or 40-foot ladders, that kind of stuff. So I hang that flag out of spite now. MAGA is trying to change it. They don't own it. They are trampling it. It's been a huge source of discipline for me. Because in the 90s, when I wrapped that dipshit up in his burning ass flag, I just couldn't stand seeing what was happening to it. Unfortunately now, though, there are so many people around me that are burning the flag by hanging it off the back of their pickup truck like a fucking idiot, out of a pole sticking out of the, you know, out of the hole in the back of their pickup bed, just flying it like it's Old Glory, which is awesome, except not for the reason they're flying it, because they're a fucking Nazi. Fascist, KKK wannabe, Proud Boys, you know, Oath Keepers, all those idiots. I started having nightmares many years ago about rolling up. I don't know why in this nightmare I was at a convertible, maybe because I wanted a convertible, but I would always roll up next to a school bus that had been repurposed. You know how school buses would be used to carry marching bands to the next town or whatever to do their thing? Well, this school bus was full of hate people, you know, KKK types or whatever. There was never a flag on the bus. Thankfully, my brain didn't do that to me. But it was people that were partying in there in the ways that only that you picture, you know, those dipshits going to the next place to have a rally or whatever. And the nightmare was me rolling up alongside of them in this convertible, and I don't know where I got the grenades from either, because I don't have any of those. I would start, as I'm driving along though, and those windows were open, I would start holding the grenade properly with one hand, pulling the pin with my pinky, and then I would just backhand flip these grenades up in those windows as I was driving a little faster than the bus was. And I'd put 3 or 4 of them in there and then just keep on going while that thing just obliterated itself. And I had this dream several times until I finally realized, hey man, you got to do something about this. This is getting out of hand. Because I know that it starts with dreams and ends up talking you into doing stupid shit. And yeah, I want those people to all die a fiery death, but I don't want it bad enough to actually make it happen, you know? And it's not that I'm afraid of taking life, not. When I was a kid, my dad, I had to help him butcher our chickens and stuff like that. When they got to the end of their laying life and stuff like that, it was time to butcher them to put them up as fryers. And God, I had to be 8 years old, and I was just kind of horrified that we had to chop the heads off all these chickens it was my job to feed them. You know, I mean, of all the 5 kids, my job was the chickens. And every day I fed these guys. I had a modern day battle with a particular rooster we had. He was a bully. He was a prize winner at a fair. And my oldest brother Jim told me, he says, you gotta beat him up because you can't let him. And I started that when I was 6. He's like, you can't let him dominate you like that, because right now you've reacted that way, and every time he sees you, he gets to think, oh boy, I get to beat up this thing that's 3 times my size. And that's what he was doing too. He was beating the shit out of me. Finally, I went in there. I followed Jim's advice, and I went in there with a wiffle ball bat, and I fucked that guy up. I mean, not bad, but enough to where he stopped coming after me. He never came after me again. But every day I went in there and collected eggs and fed the chickens. And when it was time, I'm the one that went in there with a yard rake or a garden rake and would rake out the whole chicken coop. You know, scoop it all up with a shovel, throw it away, or put it where we put stuff like that we used as fertilizer later. But throw it out of there and then put new hay down. And I always put new hay in the chicken boxes, you know, every day. And then later I had to butcher them with my dad, you know, chop their heads off on the end of a stump, end of a piece of wood, and they'd run around our barnyard, which was fenced. So, you know, it was like corral for horses. But they would run around crazy, and I thought that was the craziest thing I ever saw. That was, they could run around with their head cut off. But my dad used to always, and I expressed to him at one point that I really didn't like that. You know, that I really, really didn't like that. And he said, that's kind of how it is. You know, that's the difference between being a little boy and being a man. And he said, right now you're very, very young, but you're learning how to be a man. And he said, when you have to do this, it's you using your responsibility. You don't want to do it, but you got to do it. You're using your sense of responsibility to feed the family. And he said, everybody loves to eat chicken, but nobody wants to kill them. And I was like, yeah, shit, I get that. I don't want to make other people. I love chicken, and I eat chicken a lot, and I didn't want to make other people have to kill them just so that I could have them. So I'm like, okay, I'll do my part, you know. So I learned that as an early, you know, growing up on a farm, you know, for the 7 years we were there. And also later as a hunter, you know, I didn't enjoy killing animals. You know, I was good at it. I knew how. I knew all the tricks. But we put up that meat and ate it, you know. I never ever took an animal like a deer that was too skinny, you know, because I was like, nah, they're not old enough. And they're so skinny that it wouldn't be worth the life you're taking, you know. It was a concept that stuck with me. You don't take a life unless you have to. And if you're not going to eat it for food, don't do it, you know. You don't catch a bunch of fish and then let them go to rot. You know, you don't kill a deer and then not prep it properly so it can't be used. And you don't kill a deer that's too young or too skinny or whatever, and it doesn't matter if you haven't seen anything else all day. You know, you just don't do that. So the same thing applies to all kinds of taking life. You don't take life unless it's important, unless it's important enough to take a life. There's a billion ways to kill things. We still don't know how to make it. We still don't know how to create life. We get to see it and study it all the time for a long time. And we still can't make it happen ourselves without the aid of the tools that are already given us by nature. We can't start from molecules and create life. So every single life is really, 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 really important, and it has to be worth it. When you cut grass, you're not killing it. You're trimming it. You're altering it, but you're not killing it. When you pick a rose or snip a rose to give to somebody, you're not killing the plant. That's how I look at it. And even when you imagine getting into gardening, the first part of the year when you've got to till the garden and there's weeds in there and stuff like that, you're going to be killing a lot of plants. But the plants that you're going to be planting and the food that you're going to be getting out of it makes it worth it to kill all those weeds. Even we call them weeds, but they're life. There's no excuse for indiscriminately killing, like just for fun. I have no respect for people that kill just for fun. None at all. At that point, if they die a horrible death, I'm like, hey, karma, man. What goes around comes around. Live by the sword, die by the sword. That kind of thing. It's basically math. The more you kill, the more likely you will be killed. That's the math. Statistical. Anyway, enough of my BS today. I'll let you guys go. I tried to do this like shit 15 minutes ago, but I didn't succeed. Hope you guys have a great day. I'm posting a bunch of little stuff out of my phone today that I've recorded and stuff. So I hope you enjoy it. Most of it won't have a title or anything like that, but I hope you see it. Like and subscribe, will you? Because then you will see that kind of stuff more often if that's something you like. And so whatever you're going through in life right now, don't give up. Okay? You have a lot of living you have left to do. Even if you're a 60-year-old man or woman, shit, you got another 20 years in you. You never know what kind of cool shit you're going to see. And yeah, painful knees, painful elbows, painful all that stuff. At some point that's going to be solved. And you won't have to deal with that anymore. Shit, they might even solve aging, So you think you're toward the end of your life? You might live to be 150 if you just give it 20 more years. Anyway, have a great day, guys. Take it easy. Don't give up. Later. I love you guys. I love every one of you. Hey, say something to me on my stuff. Tell me to shut up or whatever. See ya.